Hey, welcome, John Kruth, Rhine Research Center. We are thrilled to have you here. Can you start us with what is the definition of parapsychology?
Well, that's something I've been talking about for years. Parapsychology, people think about it in a lot of different ways because when people hear paranormal or parapsychology, they've grown up with ideas of things that are unexplained or unknown to them. They see things on TV, like, when we were kids, there used to be a show called In Search of and One Step Beyond, and really cool shows on. Now there's all kind of ghost hunter shows, and people just lump it all together and say, oh, this is parapsychology. But we are scientists. Parapsychologists are scientists. And to be a scientist, we have to have a specific definition for our science. Well, back in 1935, J.B. Rhine, who was at the Duke Parapsychology Lab, came up with a very specific definition. And there's five phenomena that he discussed. One of them being telepathy, or mind-to-mind communication. A second one being clairvoyance, or getting information about objects or events that are distant. Some people talk about remote viewing. Remote viewing is a form of clairvoyance. We also talk about precognition, getting information through time, usually information about something that hasn't happened yet in the future, but sometimes also from the past. So these three things together, telepathy, mind-to-mind communication, clairvoyance, getting information about objects that are hidden, or precognition, those three things together are what we call ESP, or extrasensory perception. Now, besides extrasensory perception, there's also mind-matter interaction, something we call psychokinesis. You might hear telekinesis quite often. We don't use that term within the science. Telekinesis is an old term. We use the terms PK, or psychokinesis, or sometimes mind matter interaction. They're all interchangeable, they mean the same things. It's affecting objects from a distance with no physical interaction with them. With usually with intention, but sometimes it just has an impact on things around you.
Much like
So
our friend Ed here, correct? He's
yeah, right.
psychokinesis.
Ed has done that quite often in my lab, actually.
Mhm.
So things like PK and ESP, if we group all that together, all the ESP and PK together, that's something we call psi. PSI. It doesn't stand for anything, it's not initials. It's just a way to refer to all of these things together. Now, I mentioned four things, but I said there's five. The fifth area is what we call survival studies. Survival studies incorporates everything from near-death experiences where people their heart stop or their brain activity stops, and yet they continue to have experiences. Some people talk about seeing a bright light and ending up in a garden somewhere or meeting loved ones or things like this. This is near-death experiences. Out-of-body experiences where people feel like they are leaving their body and traveling to a different location and able to have experiences there and then returning to their body. Uh, Mediumship, people who describe communicating with spirits, understanding what the spirits are talking about, and then bringing that information back to people who are alive, acting as a medium between the living and spirits. Uh, Ghosts, apparitions, hauntings, these are the types of things that also indicate that there's something beyond the physical form. There's something about the survival of the spirit or the soul or the personality, the character, whatever you want to call it, outside of the physical body, at least for a period of time. All of those things we group together and call survival study. So parapsychology is ESP, PK or psychokinesis, and survival studies. A lot of people talk about Bigfoot, talk about UAPs, aliens, UFOs. These are interesting topics, but they are not directly related to what we study in parapsychology. Our science is pretty clearly defined within these areas.
And at the Rhine Research, I know you offer classes. Can you tell us what kind of classes you offer, and are they online or in person only?
Yeah. Well, the Rhine Education Center, back about 15 years ago, I was speaking to one of our other researchers, And I was talking about how in the United States, there's really no place to study the science of parapsychology. And there's no place to get a degree for this. And she had a degree from UK where she had been living, and I had a lot of technology background at that time. So we said, you know what we really need is a school. So we started the Rhine Education Center 15 years ago with one course, which was just an introduction to parapsychology. But over the years now, we've expanded and we have, I would say about 60 courses that we offer and three different certificate programs. We're not accredited, but it's all online.
Hmm.
And it's something we're offering right now. Right now, I'm teaching a course on energy healing and PK, not how to become an energy healer, but how to study energy healing, how to research PK or mind matter interaction, and how we can learn more about what the phenomena are. And that's a little bit what I'm going to talk about tonight. But we have courses about field investigate, going out and doing your own hunting for spirits, looking for haunted locations. We have courses that talk about out of body experiences, about lucid dreaming, altered states of consciousness. We have quite a number of them, and they're all at rhineedu.org, so it's pretty easy to find us.
What's your most popular course?
You know, there's a number of them. The field investigations courses where we talk about going out and creating your own paranormal research team. We have a whole 2 programs related to that, and we have a lot of people who take those courses. But in addition, the courses I teach are more the parapsychology research courses. This is stuff you cannot learn in a normal university. Most of the traditional universities, you can't find this information. But we offer courses in how to do research, how to study different phenomena, like all the ESP phenomena, PK, the survival topics as well. How do we study these? One of my favorite courses that I teach, I mean, I like a lot of them, but one of my favorite courses is a course called 8 Important Studies, where I look at 8 studies that have been done in parapsychology from the 1930s up until about 10 years ago. And we choose 8 studies that are very important to the field and explain exactly what they're about, why they're so important, and exactly what people did when they were studying them. I really enjoy that one because it brings the science into the experience as well and shows how the science developed over the past decades.
Mhm. And the science brings more of the proof that people want, right? Not just an opinion or what they think. It's the actual proof, correct, John?
Well, we consider it evidence. We
Evidence.
don't talk about proof, but evidence,
Okay.
yeah. And you know, what evidences have we found, and what evidence is are we assuming has been done, but it's not really reflected. So we kind of separate our
Hmm.
beliefs from what we have found whenever we did research.
I know you've done some studies on Ed, and I've seen you do interviews on this before, and I love some of the things that you point out on Ed. What makes Ed so different than other people that you've tested down there?
What makes Ed so different? That's a loaded question, isn't it, Ed?
Yeah, it is.
Science wise, how about we
Why
start
don't you
there?
go?
You know, the one thing about working with Ed is that when I started working with Ed, it was 15 years ago. We started working together, and as we met in the lab and we started talking about things, it became apparent he was doing things and having some effects that other people that were much stronger than other people had had in our labs. And so he and I started to talk about it and started talking about, hey, what is this that's going on? Is this healing? Is this some sort of PK effect? What is it that's happening? And what was really interesting is Ed's really interested in that. He wants to know how it works. He wants to
Uh-huh.
understand. He doesn't just want to do it. He wants to understand what's going on, so he can he can understand it himself and explain it to other people. So these are some of the things that were really fun when we first started because we were learning together as we were building. And over time, as we started to work together, and Ed, jump in here if you want, but as we worked
Yeah.
together, we got to a point where um, it became much more consistent, much more every more and more times that we came into the lab, we were seeing significant effects. Because most studies that we do in parapsychology, we end up with people who have one really good session or one really good experiment, and then that's it. And then it doesn't happen again. But with
Hmm.
Ed, we were able to find a way to continue to design the studies,
Hmm.
and in order for him to feel comfortable, and we worked together to find a way to make it much more consistent. Ed, what do you have to say about this stuff?
Well, I practiced doing a lot of things with energy as a kid growing up there, and I got very good at being very consistent. All I have to do is mentally project the energy, practice it, sit back and watch it, and then project it again and sit back and watch it, And I love to just go. That's what I like about being in New York City here. I just go out on the subway stations and things at night, and there'll be people standing there on their phones, and I'll just project energy at them and then create a gravity wave and see how many make them lean backwards and whatever like that.
Very curious, Ed.
Yeah,
I
I
know
am.
we've talked about, when you're riding down the road, you're trying to make the trucks move back and forth.
Uh-huh.
Your curiosity and the games you play, and that really keeps you interested and intrigued with what's going on.
Yeah, I mean, like when I could make those bolts of lightning hit them objects with people standing there beside me and watching, we predicted ahead of time and kabam, things like that. One, you could do that 4 times in a row in 2 weeks, and just anything I practice, and it don't work maybe the first time, but it will the next time or the third time, you know, or I'll come back at it from a different angle and make it work.
So I always say Ed is all energy all the time. He lives, eats, breathes it. He doesn't really know much about what's going on in the outside world. And I think that's also what makes him pretty unusual, right? I always call him the anomaly amongst the anomalies. John, in one of the interviews I heard you talking about Ed, one of the things that makes him so unusual is not only is he able to hit it a high mark, he's able to do it consistently. And that also makes him very unusual because almost anybody that has some skill can come in and hit, but they can't do it again. Can you talk about that and what kind of equipment you're using?
When we're talking about the equipment, there's a lot of details around that. The thing is, when we're working in this field, it's very unusual to find someone who can have PK effects, like who can affect objects or instruments or electronic devices whenever they want to. We have these phenomena we call poltergeist phenomena. Poltergeist phenomena, a lot of people think it's like a spirit that's coming down and causing all kinds of disruptions. But we also describe these phenomena in terms of there's an individual, some person, who's having an unconscious effect on objects around them. A lot of times it's based on their own emotions or their sometimes anxieties or other feelings they have. Their feelings can come out and just have effects on things around them. Well, when we see these, it's rare and it's unusual, and people don't usually have control over them. But we do have some people that we test occasionally who are able to really affect things on purpose. But when they do it on purpose, most of what we find, and it's rare that we find someone who can do it on purpose. Someone who can do it on purpose more often and regularly gives us the opportunity to go beyond, is it happening? Because we know it happens. It happens quite often in our lab. But question is, how is it happening? What's going on? Can we measure something about it? Can we measure some of the energies that we talk about? What can we do to measure these things? When we have a consistent result, then we can start looking into the mechanisms behind it. And working with Ed, as I said, working over the past number of years, we've developed it from going from, having these huge spikes that would go into very high energy, like a lightning bolt, to something that is more just raising the energy and holding it for 10 minutes straight, which is something that I haven't found with any other person I've worked with. And it's very unusual. That gives us the opportunity to really explore the phenomena and the mechanisms behind it.
Is there anything that people have in common that are able to affect objects intentionally? Is there anything that you see this is something I see in a lot of these people?
Yeah, well, one of the things that I talk about quite a bit is the fact that when we think about healing and we think about energy healing, oftentimes we're thinking about one thing. We think it's all one thing. There's different ways to do it. People use Reiki, people use healing touch, they use esoteric healing. There's all types of different healing methods. But different healers take different approaches as well. For example, some healers actually they're very uh, directed in their healing. And the way I describe this is if you go to a normal or traditional doctor for a treatment and you say, my ankle's hurt, the doctor goes directly to your ankle and they treat your ankle. If you go to a holistic practitioner, they might say, okay, your ankle's hurting, but tell me about your life. Do you exercise? What's your nutrition? They'll look at you as a full person. Not only look at your ankle, but look at you as a full person. So some people are very directed in their healing. Other people are more holistic. Some people are very intentional, where they are meaning to heal. They're trying to produce healing. Other people, it just kind of happens when they're in the vicinity. Like
Mhm.
somebody walks in the room and all of a sudden people start feeling better around them. And we don't really know why, but it's something about them. They just seem to unintentionally project some healing activity in people. And then, some people, so there's different ways that and some people are very focused on their healing. Other people, it's more generalized. So
Mhm.
when we're looking at healing, um, and we're seeing people who are very directed, people who are focused and intentional, and people who are working in the same room with another person. Those are ones we see are most likely to register consistent activity in our laboratory. This doesn't mean that, working from a distance like we are tonight,
Mhm.
or working unintentionally, like unconsciously, these things can have effects too. But I see less of an effect with that than what I see in my lab whenever someone is intentional, purposeful, directed, uh, and whenever they're local to the environment that is going on.
I know this question is going to come up. People are going to ask how they can get tested or what the qualifications are. How does it go with Rhine?
So I see. Yes, I can see people are interested in this. This is something that we right now my labs are not operational at the moment. When I do have my labs operational, we occasionally have studies where we're working with people, and sometimes we're working with more of the general public and looking for people to come in and do some testing with us, where we can learn more about what the general public is the what we call the population effects are. Oftentimes, we're also working with very selected participants. Like for example, Ed, who has a consistent result. If I'm trying to find mechanisms, I want to work with people that I already know are getting consistent results in the lab. And so that's where I'm actually working with a very small group of people, and I'm not looking for other people. But when I'm looking for these population effects, and I'm trying to find out, hey, can we have more involvement with this? That's when we'll post something on social media. We'll send things out through our mailing list and say, hey, we're looking for people, and try to and get in touch with people at that point. So yes, that's when we do that. But at this point, my labs are not active right now. Um, Hopefully by the end of the summer.
Yeah, I think you guys moved recently, correct?
We're in the process
Process
of
moving.
locating a new place. Yes.
And my next question to
Hmm.
you is, when I started with Ed, I always bring this up. It was 10% consciousness, mental, 90% physical. It was, it did go to 60. I think we're at 50 now, John. I think 50% of the people that are on with Ed right now, they are energy practitioners. They are trying to open spiritual gifts. They're trying to fine tune spiritual gifts. It's all about consciousness. So do you see that at the Rhine where the interest for classes is also escalating at the same time that we're seeing it on our side?
I think there's always been a hunger for it. I think there's always been people looking. It's a question of where do they find it?
Yeah.
Where
Yeah.
can we go to learn more about this? And since we've had the Rhine Education Center running for 15 years, we also have meetings every month that are online meetings. And I had a technology background, so I was always pushing to try to activate the technology. And 6 years ago, when the virus hit, all of a sudden everyone was looking for something to do online. We already had some activity online. Now people can come into the meetings, people can come into our classes, and they can join us from anywhere in the world. So you say, well, is there more? I think there's always been a wide interest, but now more people are finding it. What oftentimes becomes an issue, though, and Lori, I'm sure you know about this, there's a lot of people out there who are just talking. And they're not really, they don't have any sort of background or qualifications to speak on these subjects. I define specifically what parapsychology is. I'm not going to tell you about UAPs or Bigfoot because that's not my area of expertise.
Mm-hmm.
I know a little bit about it because, well, it's all around me, but it's not my area of expertise. I stick within the areas that I know. And so finding some place that's reliable, just like it is for any type of information on the web, finding information that's reliable, finding information that you can count on actually being accurate. These
Mm-hmm.
are things that people can find at the Rhine. And we can find here as well, because as I said, Ed and I have been working together for a long time to try to find ways to define and understand what's going on.
So this next question I have, I may or may not get an answer, but we'll ask anyway. With the rays of consciousness, vibration, the collective, however you want to put it, are you getting inquiries from, let's say, government agencies by any chance, like looking for information, looking for special people? I feel like the cat's out of the bag and it's kind of spreading all over the place, or maybe it's just in my little ether world. I don't know. My news feed. I just feel like it's going kind of wild. So based upon that, are you getting inquiries from institutions that you maybe never heard from before, or at least on a regular basis?
So if I say no, I'm part of the cover up, right? Now this is how it always is, but truly, no one's contacting me. We're a small community. The
Mhm.
field of parapsychology is a small community. And I know almost everyone within the community. I've had contact with them at some point in time. And I do know that some people are getting more connected to intelligence. For example, I know people who were in the government psychic spying program, the Project Stargate that they ran. I know people who are part of that and who are still connected with people in intelligence, but they're not actually doing that work anymore. And at least they're telling me they're not doing that work. I mean, but they're also, people who are in their 70s and 80s. So I believe they're retired from doing this work at this point.
Yeah.
Well, I
Yeah,
would
my,
think they probably recruited a younger. I can't believe that they
yeah.
completely shut the program down, right, Ed? What do you think?
Yeah, yeah. Now, John does get some weird calls every now and then, especially when they replay our episode of Ancient Aliens. There's all
Right.
kind of strange ones call looking for me.
You got to do the cover up. Does the Rhine make money, John?
Well, we're a nonprofit organization, so everything that we're funded through donations and through memberships. And so we have, our memberships are only $10 a month. And, I mean, I know you guys have a lot of people coming here as well. We for this little bit of money, you can support our organization and help us to continue doing our research. And just for the little bit that you might help out Ed and Laura with what they're doing here and helping to spread the word, it doesn't take much, because the more people we can get involved, the better it is. And so that's how we keep the operations going. And then occasionally I get some funding for research projects that we're working on. Some of the research I've done with Ed in the past was funded research, and we were lucky enough to be able to share together in some of the funds that came in.
So the funds that come in, are they government grants or this is private funding?
Most of it is private funding. And we have not gotten any grants from like the federal or state governments.
Is that just
Um,
because they're not interested in this subject, or it just is a non-issue for them, or a big pharma block?
The topics that we're studying don't, um, they don't, they really are different from what the government is trying to fund, especially right now. There's a lot of competition for government funding right now for sciences. And what we're studying doesn't really mesh with their directives and what they're trying to do at this point. Although there are times, like, for example, some of the work that we do related to biophotons, which is some of the things I study with Ed, some of that work is part of the health initiatives in the government. It's just we're doing something just a little bit different than they are.
Hmm.
But we're lucky enough to have some private funding that we can continue to operate. And as I said, we're nonprofit. We're not trying to get rich off of this. We don't have investors we have to please. We do things that we think will advance the science and help to inform the community. So we keep all our costs low, and we try to just work with our community and try to make everybody give people what they need.
I often say there's nobody real in Ed's industry that's killing it. Like, because they give so much away, and keeping the price down to reach the masses is the goal. Anybody
Mhm.
who's making a lot of money, I would kind of question what their real motives are. Adrian, John, what has amazed you most in your work with Ed?
His consistency, the fact that it happens at this point, pretty much. If Ed comes down here and we have him come in the lab, pretty much every single session, I get results that are impossible. And it's really interesting because I've had Ed come down and I've had other parapsychologists come in who hadn't seen our work in the lab before, and I say, look, you'd really be interested in this. You got to see it. And I put Ed in our lab and I say, okay, Ed, let's just wait for a few minutes. What we do is we take a baseline reading. We're looking at, let me explain what we do. Maybe that'll help a little bit. Um, we, we're looking at light. When we start looking at what energies, when we talk about these energies, what are these energies that we talk about when we talk about energy healing? And we oftentimes say, well, it kind of feels like it's electricity, like it's electrical in nature. And so, is it electricity? Well, we know the body is an electrical system, right? So there's electricity running through the body, and we can detect that electricity. But in order to detect it, we got to be like right against the skin, like Ed's picture there with those little sensors on his forehead. You have to be right against the skin to get a reading of the electrical system. If you start moving even just a few centimeters, even a centimeter away from the body, you lose the signal because it's really weak. But people say, well, it kind of feels like it's magnetic. Like they're being, like if people are doing healing, they feel like they're being drawn to certain areas or pushed away, or Ed does his push and pull thing. Feel like there's some magnetic aspect to it. Well, anytime you have an electrical system with current, you have a magnetic field that goes around it. So there's a magnetic field to the body as well. But in the same way, when we're trying to measure it, we have to be right against the body to measure it. Once we start getting away from it at all, we lose that electrical system or that magnetic system, mainly because there's so much magnetism around us, it just gets lost in a sea of signals around us. So it doesn't, but a lot of energy healers, a lot of people who do it, not just Ed, but a lot of people work from a distance. They're not working just right on top of people, they're working from a distance. So it doesn't seem like it's electricity. It doesn't seem like it's magnetism. So we start looking at other things like heat and different, and we can't quite find what it is. Well, a few years ago, we started looking at light. But we're not looking at just any light. We're looking at light in the ultraviolet range. We look at something called biophotons, or ultra-weak photon emissions. Biophotons are a special case of it. Biophotons it's ultraviolet light that comes from any organic matter, any living thing, whether it be plants, animals, people being animals, even single cells will produce biophotons. And this back in the 1970s was being studied by a man named Fritz Popp. And he was studying fruits and vegetables that were grown organically or not organically. And he was looking for light differences in the ultraviolet range. And he found them. But everybody was like, this is crazy. Fringe science. Who cares? Fritz is looking at light in his vegetables. Fritz is having a good time with this, but there's nothing really valuable about this. Well, that was in the 1970s. It was crazy talk. Now, it's being studied in upper level biology at MIT and Japan and Italy and all over the world, at Stanford, all over the world. It's upper level biology. Well, at the Rhine, we started looking at light and seeing if there was any sort of variation in this ultraviolet light when we brought people in that were energy healers who talk about energies and moving energies through the body. People who are martial artists who talk about chi and moving the chi and using the life force energy, the ki or the prana that they use. People who do a lot of meditation, who talk about kundalini energies moving through the body. They're all talking about these energies. Well, the question is this light anything like these energies that these guys are talking about? We found that there are certain people who do produce light when they're practicing, when they're doing their healing activity. And Ed's one of them. Ed has not only done it repeatedly. When Ed first got in the lab, Ed, do you remember when you first got in the lab and you were like throwing lightning bolts at the machine?
Yeah, that was, well, that's all I knew to do back then. And I developed my healing abilities after I brought those lightning bolts down to the constant pattern. After we worked all them years there figuring it out and didn't need to create the big bolts, I needed a more consistent pattern. So I needed to be able to create a charge that I could run into people for a few minutes instead of just making them fart one time real quick.
Right.
10-year-old Ed, he's always got to get in there.
Well, the farts were just a quick burst. That was them high things that John was seeing there. So once I learned and trained my mind to bring them down, then I was able to create many more of them at a lower level, which had a better effect when I apply it to people hurting, pain, cancers, whatever. That lower effect does much more greater good for them than those big bursts.
Well, and this is what we were seeing when we first started working together, Ed. We would look at this baseline, which we were looking at counting the number of individual photons that are produced in this ultraviolet range. And we're normally, if there's no one in the room and we're just running this thing, it'll be about 3 to 5 photons in a second because it's a really, really dark room and really sensitive equipment. But if we bring anyone in, doesn't matter who, that number jumps up to about 12 to 20 photons, and that's our baseline reading. So we'll bring Ed in and say, Ed, just chill out, don't do anything, don't meditate, nothing, just sit there for a little bit, and we'll see it around 12 to 20 photons. Well, when I said, okay, Ed, start your healing, or when I talk to other people, I say, start your martial arts form, start your meditation, whatever it might be, I'm looking for changes when they're doing these activities. And what I found with Ed is we'd see it just moving around 12 to 20 photons, and all of a sudden I'd get a big burst that's like 80 photons. That's 4 times the baseline. But it wasn't just this. We'd see numbers going up into the thousands of photons a second. We'd have some going into the hundreds of thousands of photons, and twice we even went over 1 million photons a second. This is a huge change from the baseline. And it was truly like throwing lightning bolts. And that was what was going on. And so I started talking to Ed, and I said, Ed, when you're doing your healing, are you throwing lightning bolts at people all the time? And he said, yeah, that's what I'm doing. And I said, wait a minute, is that really what you're doing, Ed? He goes, well, no, that's not really what I'm doing. And we worked through it together. And we had this conversation. And that's when we realized he was adjusting it to the people he was working with. And so how do you do that, Ed?
Well, I get a feel for them. I can, if I'm working one-on-one with people, I can just like stand there for a few seconds, and then it's like my energy field and their energy field forms into one energy field, and I just read theirs and start making adjustments to it, you know, in a sense. and they feel funny things go through their bodies and through their brains and whatever. And then if I do the Zoom rooms like I do here, I just treat everybody like we got a mannequin here and everybody's wired into the mannequin. And so I work on the mannequin and it works out on everybody in the Zoom room all over the planet in real time.
No, go
Judith
ahead.
Pennington was on, so she showed us the side-by-side scans of our brain's EDs, and then coined the term mind walking, which we use earlier in the session. What a great term. That was definitely the term of the year for sure. And that was done at the Rhine Research, correct?
Well, I know that Judith works up at Monroe, at the Monroe Institute, but she did some things with the mind mirror. That's the tool she was using at the Rhine, while we were in our light lab at the same
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, very
Right.
interesting. All right, I don't know how to pronounce this, John, so you might want to check out have you heard of Andrija Puharich's work?
Oh, Andreas Puharich. Yes. Yes, I'm familiar. Andreas Puharich was someone who was a parapsychologist back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. He did quite a bit of work in the field. And he was on TV shows like, for example, he was on a TV show called One Step Beyond back in the 60s. It was really interesting. And Susan's talking about Tamika Smith. And Tamika was someone who came to the Rhine quite often before I was there. But she was a healer who came to the Rhine quite often. But she not only did healing work, she did other things as well. But Andreas Puharich is someone who when he was on this show One Step Beyond back in the 60s, it was in the early 60s, before magic mushrooms had become illegal, and they were testing the magic mushrooms and how their effect was on ESP testing. You can still find this if you look out on the web. You can find One Step Beyond with Andreas Puharich. And you can find this episode out there. It's interesting, but he was doing a lot of different things at that time. He was also looking at healers who were doing psychic surgery, for example, people who would use their hands, and a lot of them are tricks, but he found some that he felt were legitimate and doing real surgery just with their hands. And there would be no blood, no pain, and it would assist and help people at that point as well. Ed, when you talk about, you kind of come into what we call coherence, or some sort of sympathetic connection with another person, and that's how you kind of adjust your energy. How do you find the right balance?
I just kind of phase in with them there and bring them up to my balance. I just stay at this real high level all the time. And when I go into coherence with them like that, everybody's always at this low rundown, and so I just start charging up their systems and bring it up from there up toward my level and then step away from them.
And you kind of hold it at this
Yeah. Yeah,
for
hold it
a
at my
while.
level.
And how do you know when to stop?
I don't know. My intuition just says they've had enough.
So I told Ed, I said, Ed, stop throwing lightning bolts at my machines. And do that healing stuff you do. The same thing you do when you're healing with the machines. So instead of getting these readings that were, 300,000 photons, all of a sudden I started getting readings that were 300, but they stayed at that level for minutes at a time. This is something that's really unusual. And so whenever the person who asked, what has really amazed you about working with Ed? That was one of the things that amazed me. And when I brought other parapsychologists in or other people in to see what was going on, we got the baseline and I would say, okay, Ed, you can start. And immediately, as soon as I said start, we saw a change in the light being produced in a dark room with only Ed in there, no other light source. The light would change and it would stay there the whole session until I said, Ed, stop, and it would go back down to the baseline again. So it was very clear that his activity was having a measurable effect. And why is light important? Why do we care about light? Well, light is a form of electromagnetic energy. So when we're trying to figure out what is this energy that people are talking about when they're talking about healing energy, maybe it has something to do with this light, the ultraviolet light.
Still learning, right?
Oh, we're always learning about this stuff. Once we
Mhm.
figured it all out, well, we'll find something else to learn about.
Yeah.
All
Oh
right,
yeah.
Allie the medium. I channel aliens all the time. Someone needs to research me. I can channel anything. And I, John, I think you should get a reading with Allie. I have. She can channel anything for sure. Appreciate your work. People like you help prove people like me aren't nuts. This is Cheryl from Steve's iPad. Thank you for your research and information. You and Ed and Laura are helping so many to know and expand our abilities. We are sparks of light on a limitless evolution. That is beautiful. And this is fascinating. Everything is energy, and that's all there is. True story. David, most research in private firms is not profitable. Profits are made in production. True
Oh,
story,
that's
John?
true.
Yeah.
That's true. And so that goes back to how the Rhine makes money. We're a nonprofit. So I'm
Mm-hmm.
not trying to be profitable.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm trying to do is to continue the work that we're doing and maintain the organization as we're doing it. So as you said, a lot of people in this field don't get rich. The people who do get really do well, sometimes it's because they've written a book that gives
Mm-hmm.
them an opportunity to really grow and to share. And we share together. This is one of the things within our field. We share with each other. We try to work together because, as the way I look at it, is that as we rise, all boats should rise as well. And if all boats rise as the tide rises, then we can share that information with the public. And, I think it's really important that we let people know about these phenomena and let them know that there is truly peer-reviewed scientific publications on these topics, and that it's been under controlled and blinded situations.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, to me, this is really important to let people know that we're talking about real science. We're not talking about people who are just, doing things and saying, hey, look at my YouTube video where I can show you how I do this. Or, someone in their backyard saying, look, I did this. It's like, that's cool. And I'm not dismissing that people were actually having experiences. What I'm saying is that in order for us to really show it to the world, we have to do it in a way that we're going to speak the language of science for people to really believe it. So, Ed, I'm wondering, why do you think it's important that people know about these things that we're doing?
Well, we just want to get the word out because we're going to try to get more research going and everything. And that's the whole idea here is to share some of the research we've already got going that validates, like what I'm doing here. And, it started with Dr. Levingood and then got to y'all there. Then you want to know what is my brain doing to make these things happen? So you got me introduced to Ross up at the University of Virginia. And so he determined in that pilot study that when I turn this energy on, my brain is weaving up into all levels of consciousness simultaneously, which is producing or causing my living matter to radiate biophotons at a higher rate or so. I mean, we're learning a lot of different things as we go, but it's a little bit here, and a little bit yonder, and a little bit over there, and it's just each one of the different studies just keeps adding to the whole.
You developed this by practicing.
Yeah,
It's I wouldn't say that the hand of God came down and touched you and gave you this gift. You worked at it. You
yeah.
learned it and you studied it. And it's something that other people could learn if they took the time and they took the effort to do it as well.
Yeah, Dr. Levingood, he made that point clear to me. He said, "Do not mix. You're doing something." He said, "You're clearly doing something different from all these other people out here claiming to do stuff. You're doing something. Don't mix it with any of those other things that's out there. Don't let any of them other modalities come involved with you. Don't let them veer you off path or anything. Stay on your course." And that's what I've done. I've stayed exactly on my course. I haven't let anybody others influences influencing me or say, hey, let's go mix this with what you're doing, or let's go mix this with what you're doing. When they do, I say, no, I'm staying on course. I got a mission, and it's on my single path here.
And
When I
everyone's going to have a different mission and have a different direction.
Yeah.
But the really the key, Ed, that I've seen with you is you do it all the time, every day. You practice, and it's like anything, any ability or skill you have. You want to learn to play the piano, you play all the time if you want to get
Yeah.
really good at it.
Yeah, I play with the energy from the time I wake up to the time I go down. I walk outside there, and if I walk past the doorman or something, I'll light them up on the way out. They open the door faster than when I come back.
He's all energy all the time. All right, Ed,
Uh-huh.
from Adrian, where do you feel the other person's energy? Do you feel it in your brain?
No, it feels like it's in a ball all the way around me. My brain is just an instrument of my consciousness that seems to be all the way around me, and I sense it through my conscious field.
Is the light information, is that why remote healing is possible?
That's a really good question.
Yeah.
Ye-
Ed, do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I believe that probably when I am doing my remote sessions that I'm transmitting information. Like I say, I'm charging people's batteries up, then I'm blowing the soot out of their operating system, resetting the mitochondria, and it's like I'm feeding information to their healing systems to start functioning. It's like the root command, start working, go to work. And that's all I do is just do that. They start functioning and I back away.
And speaking of functioning, we got Ida on here. I've been making real progress. I've begun walking again. Consistency is everything, guys. Reiki Master here. Love practicing and healing others, looking for healing knowledge and community. Share my light. That's what it's about.
Yeah, I've worked with a number of people who do Reiki in my lab, and there's people on our in our healing group at the Rhine who started out doing Reiki as well.
What about people on social media using dowsing rods? Is that real?
Yeah.
You know, it's what's funny, and I know you know about this because
Hmm.
when I started talking to my friends, and I start many years ago, and I started telling them what I was doing and what I was studying, a lot of them thought I was kind of crazy. And then one of them came to me one day, and he always thought I was kind of nuts for what I was studying. And then he came to me one day, and he goes, "Do you guys study dowsing and water witching?" And I said, "Well, yeah, people study this in parapsychology." He said, "My family has been doing this forever, for generations. We're the water witchers in the neighborhood that we're in. When people need a well, they call us and we go out and get it." He said, "I didn't think that was crazy. I thought it was normal."
Yeah.
So these are things that people do, and we look at this type of thing. Now, is it real what they're doing on social media? Well, let me just say, you can do anything with video. So you can fool people, you can pretend things are happening, but that doesn't mean that the phenomena is not. There aren't some people who can actually do that. And there are people who have demonstrated dowsing. Ed, I'm sure where you grew up, people were doing dowsing.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I do dowsing. I teach people how to do it without even using rods in their hands or anything. You can hold your hands like doing the energy ball and then focus it in for dowsing the grounds. And I can find water, underground power lines, phone lines. I have a track hoe and I have to go digging sometimes, and I don't want to have to wait on call before you dig. I'll go out there and douse it right quick, and I know where everything's at. I won't get
What could go
into it.
wrong? uh, my 89-year-old dad is on here and he will tell you that dowsing is real. He had to find something on his property and a guy showed up showed him exactly where it was. So yeah, that's one of his stories he loves to tell. Can Ed feel others who have light also during healing sessions?
I could sense just a little bit of the light there from Jennifer, and it amplified the light readings there when we were doing those experiments.
Mm-hmm.
Is
What we
light
did
also
is we had Jennifer in the lab while Ed was in Manhattan, and they were on the phone together. And I asked Ed if he would see if he could um, do his thing that he does and make a connection with Jennifer and see if I would see light in the room with her. Well, she is a healer also, and she naturally produces a bit of light. When Ed was working with her, they came into resonance, and I saw more light than I would normally see in the room when she's there alone. So there had to be some feedback on that, Ed,
Hmm.
right?
There was some kind of feedback loop going on there. Yeah, it
Mm-hmm.
was ricocheting off or something, creating more or so. Like even the same effect, like when I was in the lab and had Graham in the chamber with me, and he was seeing light. I
Right.
believe we were seeing interactive light between us, like a
Hmm.
third form of energy being created from our two energy forms.
Well, and
Uh,
this is
mm-hmm.
where I get into some of the technical stuff, right? When you start asking about is the light information or not? Well, all of this, everything we're doing right now, is being carried through fiber optic cables. There's light involved in all of our communication systems now. So we know light can be used to carry information. So what we're seeing a form of invisible light in the ultraviolet range. And it's very possible that that light is carrying information from one person to another. How they're receiving it, how they're sending it, those are questions yet. But if it's a communication system, it could be that that is facilitating healing. It's a little more, I'm not going to go into in a lot more detail because it gets really complicated. But when you have two people in that room, when Ed's in that room with somebody else and they start seeing light, I study perception, extrasensory perception, but also other sorts of perception. And when people see things, they see things not only based on light that might be in the environment, but also on things that they expect to see. And their cognitive processing creates an image sometimes. So they might be getting information. Hey, there's something going between us. And they may turn that into a visual experience for them. So there may not be registered light there, but it may be something that they're experiencing as if it is light. So I think that might have been what's happening with Graham in the lab with you, Ed.
Mm-hmm. Had him lit up, he could put one hand in front of the other and it'd block it out, and
Right.
that kind of
Hmm.
freaked him out.
Yes.
Do you consider light to be source?
I'm not sure what people consider source to be. I'm a scientist. I stick with the scientific stuff. I have
Yeah.
other thoughts, but I'm sticking with the scientific stuff. And until you explain to me what source is, I can't really answer that question.
Ed?
Huh? I'm a scientist too there. It's just it glows. And we
It's
looking
light.
for it's light. We're trying to figure out how to study it. I can make it get brighter or dimmer and pulsate it and cause it to have effects in other people. And so maybe we can get Ross on here to explain the energy medicine studies we do through the Monroe Institute's thing there sometime. But it's all light.
John, if you had unlimited cash, what kind of studies would you do on Ed?
Poke and prod him with needles, and
Yeah.
wire him to big devices and shock him here and there. No, 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 I wouldn't do that. Well, maybe I would, but but really, what I want to do from a scientific perspective, and this is the thing, we've been making progress. First, we learned that it was something that was happening. Then we learned to develop the consistency, and learning more about what the experience is. We then went into physiology and looking at things like heart rate and blood flow and skin temperature, and trying to see if there's correlations between physiology and the production of light. Because this is, as I said, now biophotons are something that are studied in upper level biology. And my question is, hey, what is it? How is it produced? Because some people can control it. That's what we find in our lab. Some people can control the amount of light that's produced. So what's going on with them physiologically to correspond to that? But the most interesting study that we're doing right now, or that we just started it last fall, but and we're going to kick it back up as soon as I get my labs active again, is seeing if we can produce this effect from a distance. Because think about it, right? If you have light in one place, one room, a dark room, is completely shielded, and that light can't get out of the room. No light can get in, but that light can't get out. But if I have another room where I have not only Ed in one room where he's producing this light, but in another room I have someone that is a target, a patient, so, who he is sending energy to, and if I see light on both ends, that light didn't travel through the air. It can't go through the walls. It's light. It doesn't travel through. So how did it get from one place to another?
Mm.
had to be something we would call non-local. And non-local effects, and saying that these non-local effects, it happens here and it happens here, but we don't see it in between. How does that occur? It's similar to what we see when we talk about quantum entanglements. This is what you were talking about before, Laura. So I will use that term and say, hey, it seems to be, if it does that, it behaves in a similar way. I won't say that it's quantum entanglement because I don't know if it is or not.
Mhm.
But I'll say it's acting in a way that shows that there is a non-local effect that is demonstrated to healing. That, I think, would be a really big finding if we find that that's true. So this is where we're working towards right now. Going beyond this, if we could find that there was some physical healing that was going on, and we're able to document what that was, that's beyond my expertise. I'm not a medical professional, so that would be beyond my expertise. But if we could find someone to correspond that with some of the other findings we have, that would provide a lot more of a sense of how it's happening. Ed, what do you want to do, man?
Well, that's why I'm trying to hook up like with Anna up at Yale up there with her new mental health and spirituality department's energy medicine department. She'll be able to bring that type of information in that you're requesting there to go with what you've got and we've got already. But she's looking at this because she's been bringing me people with cancer and other problems like that. And I've been working with them for 15 or 20 minutes only. And then she just follow up on them down the road for weeks and months after that and seeing positive changes in their anatomy and stuff.
Pauline, doesn't everyone carry light?
Biophotons are natural to any living thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Any living
And
organic matter.
yes, and once uh, like for example, an animal is producing light, biophotons, and then once they've died, they eventually the light goes away. So it seems to be related to something related to life.
Once I physically saw light around everyone and around everything in the room. Johnny, got anything on that? Ed?
So what I would say is that it's likely that there was some information that was being perceived, maybe through some form of ESP, that was being interpreted by your perceptual system as if it were something visual. And so
Hmm.
you saw it. Even though you couldn't take a photo of it, nobody else might have seen it. You might not have be able to detect it. But something about the information you were getting, possibly through ESP, was being interpreted as something visual for you.
Interesting. Jesse, what is the best thing for someone to do on a regular basis to keep their energy in resonance with good health? You just experienced it. Consistency is the key. If you're new to Ed, we have unlimited packages starting at $99. The more you're on, the more you feel, the better things get.
That's it.
Isn't Reiki and these Zoom rooms distance healing?
Yes.
John, has working at the Rhine with Ed or others changed your personal perspectives on life, the universe, or everything? I love that question. Yeah.
um, you know, personally, I kind of grew up. Ed talks about growing up and doing these things. I grew up in a situation where these things were very natural in my family and in my life as well. Uh, it is, I'll tell you, it's really crazy the first time you see someone doing PK in front of you. Like, I can still remember this woman had a jar and it had a little pinwheel inside of it that if you blew on it, it would spin. But it was inside of a jar that was sealed so nothing could get to it. And she put her hand next to it and the damn thing started spinning around. And then I said, stop. And she put her hands away and it stopped. I said, can you make it start? She did it again. I said, stop it. I said, can you make it spin the other way? And she put her finger next to it and started moving her finger like this. And it
Uh-huh.
started moving in the other direction. That it didn't make me think of the whole world differently, but I'll tell you what, that'll blow your mind when you see it happen right in front of you. When you see this stuff happening, it
Mm-hmm.
becomes really it shows you that things are real that you might not normally consider to be real.
Just from working with Ed for now 2 years, it's like a whole different crowd, right? So you're learning all these different modalities, all these different telekinesis, psychokinesis, however you want to do it. And it's just normal to them to see these people do these things that you didn't even know were possible. So for me, it's been like mind blowing, Ed. Not just opening, mind blowing.
Yeah. Now, how do we separate telekinesis from psychokinesis, John?
I consider them the same term, except telekinesis is an older term. Some people talk about telekinesis being doing things from a further distance, and say, from the scientific perspective, that's not the way we talk about it. We just talk about any type of influence on mind matter interaction. We consider psychokinesis, mind matter interaction, PK. Telekinesis is not something I use because telekinesis was that term came up around the time that kind of television and radio were big, and the idea was that there's a central broadcasting unit that's broadcasting information or energies out to different places. That's not the way that it works, though.
Hmm.
And so we don't use the term telekinesis, but you'll still hear it in popular media quite often.
Okay, and so that's not like sticking. What was that, Laura, that you attended? Sticking
Uh,
pennies to the wall?
I went to Dahlia Burgoyne's week-long course for senses, which was basically mind sight, telekinesis type things. And I saw some things there that are just, it changed my entire outlook on life. And that was
You
all
went to Dahlia's
yeah,
mindset
Dahlia's
course?
census program, the
Hmm.
7-day thing.
Oh, I'm jealous.
Yeah, I'm telling you, it's something I wish everybody can experience. You are doing magic, for lack of a better term, for 7 days straight. You're breaking rules. Things are just not the same when you leave there, and it stays with you.
One of the things I've found is that it's catchy. When you see it
Yes,
happening, it's
yes.
catchy. Other people start to be able to do it as well because you you start to realize, hey, this is possible,
Mm-hmm.
and then it starts happening. Yes.
Some of the census people are on here right now, so they called it modeling. So they told you to bring your perspective out to where you can see on the sides. And there was 43 people in this room, and no matter how difficult the task was, because every day was different task that they were teaching you that you thought was going to be difficult, the minute one person got it, it was like whack-a-mole right around the room until eventually everybody got it. The impossible became everyone. So yeah, being in a room full of people with that high vibration state and they're all doing it, it changes.
Hmm.
Here's a great question for more than one reason. For John, can diet help one's ability to use light in other modalities?
There's some studies going on about this right now, trying to see if how different types of diets can have an impact. And specifically, people are looking at vegetarian diets and veganism, and some very specific sort of herbs that might assist, or eating a certain way, how it might assist. It's not an area that I'm an expert on in any sense. I've read a couple of papers on this, and I'm working with a man named Graham Nichols right now. He teaches for the Rhine. He teaches out-of-body experiences. He's been doing them for 40 years, and it's online, yes, and he's able to teach this, teach these what these phenomena are like and the science behind it. And he is very, very adamant that his diet and the way he behaves and prepares himself helps him to have these experiences. Now, if you think about it, for centuries, millennia, we hear about shaman, we hear about religious people who would go through periods of fasting or go through, weeks of meditation all alone, or spend lots of time in the dark in order to enhance their own personal abilities and in order to enable them to perform some amazing task. So it doesn't surprise me that there might be some influence on what you put in your body can impact how likely you are to be able to perform certain tasks.
So once again, Ed would be the exception to this rule, as he lives on what, Cheerios and chocolate almond milk.
Yeah. Well,
I've never seen him eat a vegetable.
I do occasionally, there
Oh,
once, twice a
I've
year.
seen Ed. Ed, you were vegetarian for a while.
Yeah, yeah, I was
I
Yeah,
veggie
I
for a
remember.
broke him of
while.
that.
Yeah, I got slightly overweight there for a while. Well, overweight for what I consider myself, and
Nothing like a viral video to make you go on a diet, right, Ed?
it is when you see yourself on TV on a viral video and you got a gut hanging over there, makes you wonder what the heck you've been up to. And then I went and bought a set of scales, and I said, "Oh shit, how did I get here?"
Now at 5 million views, I might add.
Yeah.
John, have you ever studied a Tai Chi master?
Oh yes, I have. Yeah, I've worked with them in the lab as well. People who do have been doing meditation for decades, very high level meditators, Tai Chi masters, or martial arts masters in general. But yes, I've worked with Tai Chi masters in my lab, and as I was mentioning, they they talk about Chi, which is life force energy, and at times, depending upon their approach, I sometimes see them affecting or producing light in my lab as well.
Ed, do people have to be aware of you to receive healing?
It's better if they are. And that was something we talked about, John, there about a study we did there. Uh, but my modality, I need you to be aware of me. If you're not aware of me, it's like someone bringing me a picture and saying, "Here, can you do something to this person looking at this picture?" And that don't work with me. My modality, we need a mental connection. I need your mentality if at all possible. If I can't work with you directly like that, then I need a third person to be like extended hands that I can
Mhm.
work through to work on people. But I
No,
always
Ed,
find a stronger effect when they're aware of me.
you can have them feel something when you're standing next to them, like right when you're down on the subway. But in order for them to benefit, that's kind of like a different type of permission, correct?
Yeah. Their systems kind of let me know, hey, I got a problem in here. But if I'm just messing with people down on the subway platform, I'm just there for I'm just Ed being Ed, like a mischievous 14-year-old Ed.
And speaking of psychokinesis, I stuck a steel butter knife to the wall after seeing Dahlia and Alex do it. And we did post that video of Kristen doing it on Ed's TikTok. So if you want to see a little psychokinesis, right? Correct? Is that the right term we're
No,
using
no,
now? What are we
Well,
using?
nope.
that's the term, but I'm not sure I would call that psychokinesis. I don't know what that is that you're talking about.
Yeah, yeah. That's sticking,
Dinnerware
sticking,
tricks.
sticking spoons and pennies to the wall is not this energy like we're doing.
I want to mention Dahlia is someone I saw at Psy Games who was doing performed one of the most amazing examples of ESP I've ever seen. And actually, her master, her trainer, who taught her to focus, is someone who is a Tai Chi master who I've had in my lab. So it makes a
Ah,
connection back to the previous question.
uh-huh.
Her master, her sensei,
Mm-hmm.
was in my lab, and I know her. She lives down the road from me.
Oh, that's convenient. Yeah.
Yes. I
Yeah.
don't know. I hadn't met Dahlia before Psy Games, but I knew her sensei.
Yeah. She was we had her on about a month ago. It was the mind sight thing was just
Hmm.
melted everyone's mind for sure. Ed calls his work static energy. Could the sticking things to the wall also be considered static energy?
Normally, that's causing the paint to release and stick and bond because of the heating pattern through the fingers, ain't it?
I don't know
Sure.
what it is.
I don't know. I mean, I do my energy to cause people to heal. I don't use it to try to stick things to the wall with.
That's the side effect. That's what's up, people that are
Yeah.
on Ed's sessions, all these little skills are coming up. I mean, I know I went to census definitely with the edge from working with Ed. There's no doubt about it. Dolly even said that during the interview that people that work with energy tend to pick up all those skills quicker. But being in that room with 43 people all with the same intention for sure helps. So, don't get discouraged if you can't do it at home. Find a community is definitely my recommendation on that. John, have your experiences and knowledge opened up abilities within you? Great question, Kelly.
Um, As I mentioned before, I kind of grew up in an environment where this sort of things were very normal and were common. And one of the reasons I went into parapsychology is because people didn't believe me. And I had to find a way to explain it to them in a way that they could understand it. And so I thought maybe using the language of science, I could explain what's going on. But I have to say that a lot of people who are within the field who did not have a natural, like, let's say, remote viewing ability, or did not have a natural ESP ability of any sort, after working with people and studying it with them, they start to, as we were saying before, Laura, they end up seeing it, and that
Yeah.
they know that it happens, and they believe it's possible, and then they start to have these. They'll start noticing their own experiences as well.
It rubs
Personally,
off.
I have not noticed that I have more experiences, except when it comes to dreaming. It's weird. Whenever we have a speaker coming in to talk about dreaming, or when we have a special dream study going on, my dreams go crazy. But besides that, I haven't really noticed any change so much.
I love the saying, seeing is believing, but experiencing is knowing. So that was one of the sayings that was going around census that was just made all the sense there was. The people practicing TK online, I can feel their energy in the direction. Doesn't feel the best if their energy is off. Is it safe to watch these artists online if they don't have the mindset to healing those watching?
Anytime I see a video online, I just always remember that you can do anything on video. Um, and so I tend to immediately, my scientists immediately distrust the video. Or I shouldn't say distrust. I should say I don't accept a video as evidence. There needs to be more than just video of things going on. It needs to be, if there are studies going on where someone else has demonstrated this or examined it in a more controlled situation, then I feel more comfortable with it. There
Hmm.
are people who try to they they try to fake you out.
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know, this happens quite often, and they'd
Uh-huh.
say, "Hey, this is what I'm doing," when it's really not at all. So, but you find that not only in ESP, you see that in everything, right? In our entire lives. So it's good to be a discriminating viewer.
I did want to bring up something to John that with JB Rhine, I think back to like how long ago this guy was talking about these topics. And it is 2026. I'm going to check and make sure on that one. And I feel like people look at me like I'm crazy talking about these topics in today's age. Back then, how did he even find people that were willing to invest or look at something like this? I mean, for now, it sounds nuts. How was it back then? It was probably you were a witch or a snake oil salesman. What do you got?
Um, well, it was actually a little bit different back then because what happened was World War I occurred in the early 20th century. And right after World War I, a lot of people had lost loved ones in the war. And so one of the things that became like a really popular pastime in the States and in other parts of the world was mediumship. And people would go to mediums and they would want to make contact and get messages from their loved ones who had passed away, make sure they were okay. Well, when they went to the mediums, a lot of times the experience would be, it's not like when we talk about mediums now. It was very different. They would usually go to the medium's house. And it would be maybe a Friday night event or something like this. And they'd go out and they'd meet the medium at a certain hour or meet the medium's assistant who would bring them down a long hallway with candles and bring them into a dark room with a big table in front of it. They'd all sit down at the table, and then in would come the medium with all types of veils and lots of mystery around them. And they would all sit down and they would essentially have what we call a seance. Everyone put their hands on the table, so they were touching, and then there would be like trumpets would play, voices would occur, faces would bounce across. It was essentially entertainment. It was a lot of tricks going on. But it seemed that there were some people who were getting information that they shouldn't have been able to get. Now we have all ways to get all types of information about people. Back then, it was not as easy to get information about my uncle who passed away, 7 years ago. How are you going to find out about him? You don't even know who this is, but the mediums seem to be able to communicate. So JB was really interested in learning about, hey, are these mediums real or not? And so he started to study them from a scientific perspective, started going to these mediumship sessions and recognized what the tricks were and what the light flashing was and, what was going on. But he also recognized this information and said, wait, if they're getting information that they shouldn't be getting, where is it coming from? Is it really coming from Uncle Chuck who's sitting on their shoulder and whispering in their ear? Or maybe this information is coming from me. Maybe if I'm going to them, they're able to get this information from me. Telepathy, mind-to-mind communication. Or maybe at my house, I have Uncle Chuck's library and all of his books are laid out, his bowling trophies and, his pipe and his smoking jacket and things. And somehow they're able to see this from a distance. Clairvoyance. Getting information about objects or events from a distance. Or maybe in about a half hour, I'm going to tell them all about my Uncle Chuck. And somehow they're able to see this through time, through the future. Precognition. And so JB knew before he could say they were actually speaking to spirits, he had to know, are these other things real? And he started to design studies to say, hey, is telepathy real? Is clairvoyance real? Is precognition real? And that's when those ESP cards with the circle, the wavy lines, the square, that's where those were first invented, was at the JB Rhine and at the Duke Parapsychology Lab at Duke University. That was 1927, almost 100 years ago that he started doing this. So there was a hunger to know if this was real at that time. We think about, the witches that were persecuted, and there are still people who are persecuted as witches now. At that time, though, there was a hunger for information, and he was approaching it purely scientifically, and he had a great integrity as a researcher and as an academic. And so the work he did was, people rejected it right off and said it can't be real. But they were intrigued because he seemed to be getting consistent results. And other people were as well. So he was able to build on this. And using very, very gradual advances, using very strict scientific controls, he was able to grow the science. And it's brought us, following those same, the Rhine Research Center is now just an evolution of that original work that he did at Duke University. And so we are still, you notice when I talk about Ed, I don't say Ed's healing people because I don't know. But I can say, here's what happens when he's in my lab. I'm very conservative with the way I interpret what's happening. But I do report on what we experience in the lab. This is the way I feel science can be done conservatively and continue to advance without getting into all kind of crazy claims about what might be going on, because I don't know. I can't make claims beyond what I see in the lab.
Yeah, but I don't claim that I'm healing anybody. I'm just tuning them up. I'm just a greasy hillbilly alien tune-up mechanic here.
And JB Rhine, he was a botanist, correct? And then he went pretty far,
Yes.
reached across the aisle over there, right?
Both JB and his wife Louisa, they were both, and this was back in 1920s. Louisa Rhine, his wife, was a PhD in biology, studying botany, and JB was also studying botany. He also had a tendency towards religion as well. He grew up in a very religious family, but he found this passion for science, and he looked at this as a way to look at the beliefs that people have in religions, look at spirituality, and examine it from a scientific perspective. That was a really revolutionary thing to do back in 1930s.
It almost comes across revolutionary now when you talk to some people, right? They're
Yes.
What's the most important book a lay person can learn more? What would you start
Learn more
with?
about what?
Yeah.
There's, what I would recommend is if people are interested in more information about this topic related to parapsychology, check out our website. Look at the Education Center as well, because there's a lot of information that we share in the Education Center, including an Introduction to Parapsychology course, which gives you just the basics that we're going to be teaching next quarter, which will start in May, I believe. So there's some opportunities. And also the website of the Parapsychological Association.
Mhm.
That is kind of our professional organization. If you want to know about the science, these are some of the organizations that can help you to learn more about it.
And you'll be back at the Psy Games again this year?
Yeah, I'm planning
Yeah.
on being there. It's in Charlotte. It's not too far from me.
Nice,
Yes.
nice. All right, I think we can close it on this quote here from Cheryl. We are all enlightened by this session physically, emotionally, and mentally and consciously. Blessing to all. We are now all hungry for more. John Kruth, thank you so much for joining us. I know we had to reschedule. I appreciate you making it work tonight. I know that was a conflict for you. Ed,
Uh,
thank you for lighting everybody up as always.
Oh yeah.
And actually getting an explanation of how you're doing so. Thanks, guys.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Goodbye, everybody. Take
Good
care.
night.
Here we go.